The sliding doors closed before he could say a word. Nolan Vance had been standing at the service entrance of the Meridian Grand for 11 minutes, a reinforced case in one hand and a work order clipped to a board in the other, when the woman in the charcoal blazer walked past him without slowing down. She did not look at the case. She did not look at the work order. She looked at him the way people look at furniture. Not with hostility exactly, but with the particular absence of attention that means a person has already been filed away as not relevant. He had been there to service the backup generator control panel on the lower level. Scheduled maintenance. The kind of job that kept a hotel like the Meridian Grand running without anyone on the upper floors ever needing to think about it. What happened next took less than a minute. The woman in the charcoal blazer spoke to the front desk manager, a young man named Cody who had the permanent expression of someone trying to look unafraid. She said something too low for Nolan to catch. Cody nodded, picked up the phone, and made a call. And by the time Nolan reached the front desk to confirm his access credentials, the call had already been made. Security escorted him out through the lobby, past the fountain, past the check-in line, and through the revolving door onto René Levesque Boulevard. His case was handed to him on the steps. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He signed nothing, said nothing, and walked to his truck parked 2 blocks east without looking back. 3 hours later, the Meridian Grand lost power to its entire 14th floor. 3 hours after that, the woman in the charcoal blazer was on the phone with her regional director, trying to explain why 47 guests, including a federal cabinet minister and the lead delegation from a Pacific Infrastructure Summit, had spent the afternoon without climate control, without functioning card readers, and without any working elevators above the 9th floor. The cabinet minister's name was in the morning papers. The Meridian Grand's name was beside it. Nolan heard about it on the radio driving home. He turned it off after 30 seconds and did not think about it again until the phone rang at 7 the next morning. His name was Nolan Vance. He was 53 years old. He ran a one-man operation out of a low building near the rail yards on the east side of Montreal, a space he had rented for 11 years because the rent was reasonable and the ceiling was high enough to move equipment. The sign on the door said Vance Technical Services in black letters that had faded to gray sometime around 2019. He had not replaced them because the people who needed to find him already knew where he was. He had spent 19 years working as a systems engineer for a national hospitality infrastructure firm, the kind of company whose name appeared at the bottom of hotel maintenance contracts in small print. He had designed backup power protocols for 14 properties from Halifax to Vancouver, written 2 internal manuals that the firm still used under different covers, and trained 31 technicians who now worked across the country under other people's names. He had left that world 8 years ago, quietly, after a disagreement with the firm's new ownership about the right way to cut corners. He did not make noise about it. He did not file anything. He simply stopped returning calls from that particular area code and started taking smaller contracts from smaller clients who wanted things done correctly the first time. He lived alone in a 2-story house in Rosemont. His daughter, Tess, called on Sundays. He made his own coffee, kept his tools in order, and went to bed before 10 most nights. It was not a large life. It was the life he had chosen after the larger one had cost him more than he was prepared to keep paying. The woman who had walked past him in the Meridian Grand was named Sandra Kemp. He did not know that at the time. He learned it from the work order callback when the hotel's facilities coordinator called to reschedule. He had heard the name before. He thought about that for a moment, standing in his workshop with the phone in his hand, and then he let it go. Sandra Kemp had been the general manager of the Meridian Grand Montreal for 4 years. Before that, she had managed 2 other properties in the Prestige Collection portfolio, a boutique in Quebec City, and a resort on the Ile d'Orléans that had won a regional hospitality award the year before she left it. She was 46, decisive, and had a reputation in the industry for running tight operations. Her numbers were good. Her guest scores were good. Her staff turnover was lower than the chain average, which in the hotel business meant something. She was also, by her own account, someone who made fast decisions and revisited them rarely. The morning after the power failure, she sat in her office on the 2nd floor, with her door closed and her laptop open to an incident report that ran to 11 pages. The backup generator had failed to engage within the response window specified in the maintenance contract. The control panel had been flagged for service 2 weeks earlier. The service technician had arrived on schedule and had been removed from the property before completing the inspection. She had not known, when she had spoken to Cody at the front desk, that the man at the service entrance was the technician. She had seen a man in a worn jacket with a heavy case standing near the service doors, and she had assumed, quickly, completely, without checking, that he was in the wrong place. She read the incident report twice. She read the work order confirmation once. She closed the laptop, stood at the window for a moment, and then called her director of facilities. His name was Joel Tremblay. He had been with the hotel for 6 years and had the careful voice of someone who chose his words around difficult conversations. "The technician," she said. "Vance, what do we know about him?" Joel told her what he knew. 19 years with a national firm. Wrote the maintenance specs that 3 Prestige Collection properties currently operated under, including the Meridian Grand. Left the industry 8 years ago and went independent. Regarded by the people who had worked with him as one of the better systems engineers in the province. Sandra was quiet for a moment. "He's the one who wrote our own generator protocol," she said. "Yes," Joel said. She did not say anything else on that call. The facilities coordinator who had rescheduled with Nolan was a woman named Pam, and she called back at 7:12 on a Tuesday morning with a different kind of request. Not a rescheduled appointment. A direct call from the general manager's office asking whether he would be available to meet that afternoon. Nolan was at his bench replacing a corroded terminal on a control board. He set down the solder and thought about it for 3 seconds. "What for?" he asked. Pam told him the general manager wanted to discuss the incident in person. "There's nothing to discuss," he said. "I'll come back and finish the inspection when someone sends me a proper access confirmation. That's all that needs to happen." There was a pause on Pam's end. "She'd like to speak with you directly," Pam said. "I think she wants to address what happened." Nolan picked up the solder. "Send me the access confirmation and I'll be there Thursday." He hung up and went back to the terminal. The confirmation arrived by email 40 minutes later. There was a second message underneath it, from an address he did not recognize, with a subject line that said only, "Please." He read it. It was 4 sentences from Sandra Kemp, written without a letterhead and without a signature block. She said she understood if he preferred to handle this through scheduling only. She said she would like to speak with him if he was willing. She said she did not expect anything from the conversation and was not asking for it on behalf of the hotel. The 4th sentence said, "I think I owe you that much at minimum." He read it twice. He did not reply. He went back to the terminal and finished the repair, and that night he sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about the kind of person who sent that kind of message. He arrived at the Meridian Grand on Thursday at 9 in the morning. He came in through the service entrance, as scheduled. Cody was not at the front desk. A different staff member confirmed his credentials without incident and handed him a temporary access card. Joel Tremblay met him at the elevator to the lower level and walked him down to the generator room without unnecessary conversation. Nolan appreciated that. He set his case down and began the inspection. The control panel was in worse shape than the original assessment had suggested. Someone had replaced a relay board sometime in the past 18 months with a non-compatible part. The part had worked, marginally, until it had not. It was the kind of substitution that looked fine to anyone who wasn't looking at the full system diagram, and it was exactly the kind of thing that Nolan's maintenance protocol, the one he had written 11 years ago, would have flagged at the previous service visit if he had been allowed to complete it. He documented everything. He photographed the relay board and the wiring harness and the installation date stamp. He wrote it into the service record in plain language that would survive a legal review. The inspection took 2 hours and 20 minutes. When he came back up to the main level, Joel was waiting in the corridor. Joel asked if he had found what he needed. Nolan told him he had, and that the detailed report would be in writing by end of day. He handed Joel the temporary access card and picked up his case. "Miss Kemp asked if you'd have a few minutes," Joel said. Nolan looked at him. "She's in her office. I can take you up, or I can tell her you had to go. Either one is fine." Nolan was quiet for a moment. "A few minutes," he said. The office was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a corridor lined with framed photographs of the hotel at various points in its history. Sandra Kemp was standing when he came in, which he noticed because most people in her position sat behind their desks for conversations like this one. She was taller than he had registered at the service entrance. She had the kind of posture that came from years of standing in rooms where people were watching. "Mr. Vance," she said, "thank you for coming up." He nodded. He did not sit down. She did not insist. "I wanted to say in person what I said in the email." She kept her voice level. "I made a wrong call 3 weeks ago. I saw you at the service entrance, and I made an assumption based on nothing accurate, and I passed that assumption along to my staff in a way that had real consequences." Nolan looked at her evenly. "The hotel lost power to the 14th floor," he said. "Yes, the minister's delegation had to relocate to the Fairmont. Yes, the relay board has been incorrectly installed for over a year. My inspection would have caught it. I know." She held his gaze. "I read the original maintenance protocol. I know you wrote it." Something passed across his expression. Not surprise exactly, but recognition of a kind. He set his case down on the floor and crossed his arms. "Then you understand," he said, "that what you're apologizing for isn't the inconvenience. It's that your building has been running with a substandard repair for 14 months, and nobody on your team was looking at the right thing." Sandra was quiet. "I understand that," she said. "The next failure won't be a 14th floor outage." His voice did not rise. It remained exactly where it had been. Depending on load conditions, it could affect the emergency lighting circuit. That includes your fire safety systems. She had gone still. "It's in the written report," he said. "Everything I found. You'll have it this afternoon." "I'll read it today," she said. He picked up the case. He was 3 steps toward the door when she spoke again. "Mr. Vance." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Can I ask, why did you come back? After what happened at the service entrance, you didn't have to take the rescheduled booking." He turned then, slowly. "I came back because the building has a problem that needs to be fixed," he said. "That's separate from what happened at the entrance." She nodded once. "And the report," he said. "Read the section on the relay board installation. There's a part number. I'd like to know who approved that substitution, because it wasn't in the original contract spec, and someone signed off on it." He left the office without waiting for a response. Sandra read the report that afternoon the way she had not read anything in years, start to finish. Every footnote, every part number, every timestamp. The relay board section was on page 4. The part number was there. The installation date was there. The approval signature, captured on a scanned work order from a different contractor, was there. The contractor was a company called Rideau Facility Solutions, which had held a supplementary services contract with 3 prestige collection properties in Quebec for the past 2 years. Sandra had not approved that contract. It had been approved at the regional level by the Director of Operations for the Eastern Portfolio. His name was Glenn Ashworth. She had met him twice in person and spoken with him on calls more times than she could count. He was smooth in meetings and fast with numbers, and had a way of moving conversations past technical detail that she had always attributed to confidence. She was sitting at her desk with the report open and her laptop pulling up the Rideau contract when her phone buzzed. It was Glenn. She let it ring. She sent the report to her legal contact at head office instead, and flagged the Rideau contract and the relay board installation. She wrote 3 sentences explaining what she had found and what she believed needed to be investigated. Then she called Joel Tremblay. "The relay board," she said. "Rideau installed it. Pull every work order from Rideau going back 24 months. Every property." Joel was quiet for a second longer than usual. "All 3 properties?" "All 3, she said. What Joel found over the following week was not dramatic in the way that dramatic things usually announce themselves. It was quiet. It was in the paperwork. Rideau Facility Solutions had completed 41 service calls across the 3 prestige collection properties over 22 months. In 11 of those calls, the parts installed did not match the parts specified in the original maintenance contracts. In 7 of those cases, the substituted parts were cheaper by a significant margin. The billing, however, reflected the price of the original specified part. Someone had been charging for premium components and installing standard ones, and pocketing the difference across 3 hotels, 41 jobs, and 22 months. The total gap when Joel's spreadsheet was finished was a number that made Sandra sit back in her chair and look at the ceiling for a long moment. Glenn Ashworth had countersigned 18 of the 41 Rideau invoices. Sandra sent the complete file to head office on a Friday afternoon. She did not copy Glenn. She did not call him. She simply sent the file with a cover memo that was factual, organized, and entirely without editorial comment. She heard nothing over the weekend. On Monday morning, Glenn Ashworth was placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. By Wednesday, the review had been escalated to an external audit firm. By the following week, the audit had expanded to include Rideau's contracts with 2 additional hotel groups in Ontario. Sandra was informed of each development by her regional contact at head office, a woman named Christine, who spoke in the careful tone of someone reading from a document she had not written. She did not issue a statement. She did not give an interview. She went back to running her hotel. 3 weeks after the audit began, on a Saturday morning that felt more like October than the calendar suggested, Sandra drove to the east side of the city. She had looked up the address from the service file. She had not called ahead. She parked on the street and walked. The building was low and brick, set back from the road with a short gravel lot in front. The door was propped open. Inside, the smell was machine oil and cold concrete, and the particular stillness of a place where work happened without anyone watching. Nolan Vance was at the bench with a component she could not name spread across a foam mat. He looked up when her shadow crossed the threshold. His expression was the same as it had been in her office, attentive without being warm, present without being open. "Mrs. Kemp," he said. "I should have called," she said. "Yes." He set down the tool he was holding. "Come in anyway." She stepped inside. The space was organized in a way she had not expected, not just tidy but considered. Every shelf labeled, every cable coiled to the same diameter, the kind of order that came from knowing exactly where everything was in the dark. She told him what had happened: the Rideau contract, Glenn Ashworth, the audit. She told him cleanly, without embellishment, because she had the sense that embellishment would land badly in this room. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "The part number," he said. "Yes, that's what started it. That's what started it," she said. He nodded slowly, the way a person nods when something confirms what they already suspected rather than surprises them. "How many properties?" he asked. "5 so far. The audit is still running." He looked at the component on the mat. He did not pick it up. "There were substitution patterns like this in the firm I worked for," he said. "Before I left, the people doing it were careful. They only used it on systems that weren't flagged for regular inspection, because if the inspections were happening on schedule, someone would eventually look at the part number." He paused. "The easiest way to make that work is to make sure the inspector doesn't get in the door." Sandra felt the sentence land somewhere specific. "I didn't know," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I had no reason to think I didn't know what you were there to do." "I know you didn't," he said. It was not forgiveness. It was just the acknowledgement of a fact, which was she was beginning to understand how he handled most things. "The fire safety concern," she said. "The emergency lighting circuit. Fixed Thursday," he said. "Joel called me. We replaced the relay board and checked the secondary circuit. I know. I approved the work order." She paused. "I wanted to thank you for noting it specifically. You didn't have to go that deep in the report. It was there," he said. "I noted what was there." She looked around the workshop, the labeled shelves, the coiled cables, the old truck visible through the side door, the one she had seen in the service lot that first morning, the one with the dent above the rear wheel well that she had not been close enough to notice before. "Did that happen?" she started. "The stepladder in the bed shifted when I braked hard last winter," he said. "Nothing to do with your property." She almost smiled. She was not sure whether he was being precise or kind, and she decided it did not particularly matter. "I'm not here to offer you a contract," she said. "Good," he said. "But if you're willing, I'd like to pass your name to Christine at head office, not as a recommendation for chain-wide work, just as someone who should be on a list of people worth calling." He considered that for a moment. "Christine can have my number," he said. "Whether she calls is up to her." Sandra reached into her bag and took out a card. She placed it on the edge of the bench. It was not the hotel's card. It was a personal one, with her direct number and her name and nothing else. "If you ever need anything from my end," she said. He looked at the card but did not pick it up. "I'll keep it," he said. She accepted that. She moved toward the door. Just before she stepped out into the thin autumn light, she turned. "One question," she said. "When I sent that email, the 4 sentences, you didn't reply, but you came anyway. Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because you didn't send it from a hotel account," he said. "You sent it from a personal address. People who want to manage a situation use the hotel account. People who actually mean something send it from themselves." She held that for a second. "That's all it took?" "That," he said, "and the fact that the building still had a problem. Those 2 things together." She nodded. She walked out into the light. She did not look back. Nolan picked up the tool and went back to the component on the mat. The morning was quiet, the way Saturdays were quiet on that side of the city, without the particular urgency of the week pressing in through the walls. He had been asked, over the years, by a few different people in a few different ways, what he had taken away from leaving the industry the way he had. He had never given a very satisfying answer to that question, because the honest answer was not the kind of thing that sounded like a lesson. It was more like a rule he had developed quietly over time, that the only work worth doing was the work you could stand behind when no one was looking, and that the only apology worth receiving was the one that came without anything attached to it. Sandra Kemp's card sat on the edge of the bench. He did not move it. He worked around it until the afternoon came, and the light through the high window shifted to the color of cooled copper, and then he set down his tools, covered the component, and locked up for the day. He drove home the way he always drove home. No radio, no calls, the city moving past the windows in the particular silence of a person who had made his peace with most of it. Not all of it. Most of it. That was usually enough.